Well, this is part 2 of the Python method of getting user input. I was realizing I was going on too long, so I've split the over 1 hour video into 2 halves. So apologies for the very poor edit. So it will now go straight into the ending of the last part and into part 2. Next is we're now going to increment the row number. So at the moment the row is 0, but we now want to increase it because we've just put in 2 lines. So the row really is not 0, it's 2, 0, 1, 0, 1, 2. So we need to change that. So we're going to increment row by calling this getRow function, which is up here. So I could just, of course, add 2 to it, but I'm still working on the assumption that some people might be running this in idle or in some kind of IDE that has some crappy output like this that doesn't take any note of the ANSI commands. So let's go and call that row. And it says if the row is -1, which it isn't because the row is 0, it will return -1. So if you're inside an IDE, you're always going to have a row as -1. Else, we're going to do return the row that it currently was, plus the rows that we've passed in, which in this case is 2. So I said row equals getRow, row 2. So we're passing in 2 more. So we can now add row to rows and return it. So the row is now 2 because it was 0. So we're now on row 2, 0, 1, 2. So that is correct. And now we're going to get the user's age. So we're obviously looking for an integer. So again, we're passing in a prompt, and this time I've passed in a minimum of 5 and a maximum of 120. So I doubt whether there's many 120-year-olds running this Python script, but it's just a number, so you could put whatever you like in if you wanted to restrict the age. And again, we're passing the row, which is currently 2. So let's go into the keyboard again, and this time we're not using getString, we're using getInteger. Again, it's checking what the current row is, as we did with getString, and then adding 1 to it as long as it's greater than or equal to 0. So it's 2. So F7, the row is now going to be 3. And again, we're processing the input. So this time our prompt is, how old are you? Minimum 5, maximum 120. Data type is int, int. Again, that's a string int, not using the actual sort of Python description of the data type. This I've just used the string equivalent of it. Again, we're running our input there. Let's do what we did before. So this time I'm going to type in 10. So it's asking how old am I? 10. And of course it stopped here. So output equals user input, which is 10. So F7. We know that we haven't put in an empty string. So now checking, is the data type Boolean? No. Data type is int. So we're now going to see whether we can convert our user input into an integer by using Python's built-in converter here, int, open brackets, and put your string in there, which of course is currently reading 10. So can we convert the word 10 into an integer? So let's try it, which is why it's in a try except thing here. So if the data type equals int, which it is, user input equals int, user input bang, that throws an error down here, look, invalid literal for int with base 10, 10. So it obviously will then throw the except thing here. Data type is int. So we're now going to make the error message of row 3 not int as the string, and then our output is the word 10. So let's pass that to the error message. Again, we've got the default message. So our default message is just pressing the enter key, blah, 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 blah. Now the error type that we passed is not int. So that's this line here. So we're waiting for that one to spring into life. So we'll press the F7. Bool, no, not int. That should be the one. There we are. Message is try entering a whole number, and then 10 doesn't cut it. So let's go to F7 again. Then we add our frilly bits to the message. So our full message now reads greater than, greater than, greater than, try entering a whole number, 10 does not cut it. And then we move in, clear the inputs as we did before. Alright, that's done. And this time we're back. We've cleared out the asking for your age, but we've left the lines above where they were, so that we're now working this part of the console. So let's print the message. And as you can see, try entering a whole number. That's our message. It'll sleep for 2 seconds and then clear the row. So let's step all through those. Two-second sleep. So we're back to the while valid input is false, and we've got a console clear and ready to accept the next value. So this time we'll put in let's put in a floating point number. So we'll run that from this point onwards. Let's just bring the console back in. So how old are you? I'm going to try 4.5. No, let's make it, because we set a minimum, didn't we, of, let's make it 7.5. And press enter. Okay, so data type is still int. Length of the user input is not 0, so that one's alright. If the data type is bool, which it's not, so we're going to try an integer. And again, Python's int method, even though we've passed in a number, 7.5, int won't work. Float would. So that's why we can use this similar thing, but we're just trying to convert that into an int. So if I press F7, again, it's going to fail. Built-in's value error, invalid literal for int with a base 10, 7.5. So you can see Python does not like that at all. So we'll F7 out of it, and we're then going to pass in a slightly different message where it's not int. So again, we'll run that, and then finally we'll pull in, if I can just bring that in, we'll hit the green button. Okay, so you just briefly saw that vanish, and it sent the message and then put this back on. So this time I'm going to put in a genuine value. Let's hit 5.5 just because it's convenient. Let's just see whether I set the stuff up. Yes, I did. Okay, data type string. So again, we're going to try now to see, this time we tried to get the user input as an integer, and you'll see that user input, if I hover over, you can see the characters 55 there, but they're not enclosed in quotes. In other words, this is now genuinely an integer value. It's not a string. I believe the stack data shows that as well. Yeah, so the output was set to 55, and the user input has now been changed to the value 55 as a number, whereas our original, what we put in, was 55 inside quotes there. So you can see that. So we're now going to check whether the user input, which is now a proper number, is greater than or equal to the minimum value and less than or equal to the maximum value, which it is. So we're going to press F7 there. Now, this is perhaps not really required because we won't have got this far if the user input was still a fraction. So I think this was when I was working with my Lua version that Lua has a 2 number, which doesn't distinguish between integer and floating point or any other kind of number. So this was kind of put in unnecessarily because we won't have got this far if we didn't have an integer. But it's just checking if the data type is int. Yes, it is. And if you round up or round down the user input, if it's not equal to the user input, then that will cause an error that it's not an integer. But let me just press the F7 there. So it's validated, the input is true, so we can skip the thing there and we'll be returning our user input. So let's press the green thing there. Okay, so this one is accepted. That I've put my age as 55. How tall are you in meters? I don't think I need to go through the whole process for this again because you should be beginning to see how it works now. So obviously if we're going to ask for a floating point number, so we don't need the integer, we're asking for a float now. Again, we're just going to call the same process input, except that this time our data type will be of float, not int. So it will check again, have we given an empty string? Then is the data type is float, then we're just trying to convert using Python's built-in float converter here. Again, if that fails, because it can't be converted, it will send us down to the accept here. And then if the data type is not an integer, in other words, we've chosen a float, we will put the error message row NaN, not a number, output. So let me just go at least to this point. So we'll put that in. So I'm going to put 10 as my answer here. And then we'll flick through these. So we're trying to convert it into a float. That doesn't work. So the error message is now NaN output. And that changes it to try entering a number. User input 10 doesn't cut it. As before, same thing here. So let's let that one continue. Again, it will flick on and flick off. You didn't see that, but it was just asking me again. Let's put in 1.7, and this time it will be accepted because the conversion is correct. So user input equals float user input, doesn't error. So we're checking whether the user input is okay with the minimum and maximum values, and returns it. So let's hit the green button again. So now we've come to the Boolean one. So we've got a valid input for our height. Let's put, I'm just going to put yes or y, just y, which is a correct answer, of course. So I'm not going to go through the entire process again. So we've data type is bool. So F7, we're checking whether it's an empty string. If the data type is bool, now what we're doing here is to check whether the user input, which I've put in as Y, character 0, the first character, to lower, is lowercase y. If it is, user input is true and valid input is true. So we're actually converting our user input, which started off as a string, into a Boolean value, which is something, of course, you can do in Python and indeed in Lua, but it will not work in C#. You have to keep the data types to what you set them at. But it's now accepting that that is a correct answer. If we had put an N at the beginning of our word, no, N, not on your Nelly, whatever, it would have come out as false, but Y has come out as true. User input's true, valid input's true, and of course that will then proceed. So let's press the green button. There we go. Yes, unfortunately I just missed that, but it does user likes Python. So now we've got the utility. So let's see how this is drawn. So obviously from our keyboard demo point of view, we are clearing the console first. So it resets the row back to it. Then the title is what do you think of this utility, which appears here. And then we've got this menu list. If I can just move that slightly. There we are. You've got the menu list as brilliant, not bad, could do better, and rubbish. So by passing the list to the menu function, it will create a menu of the correct size and put the correct numbers in with the title at the top. So you don't need to provide any of the numbers here. You just simply provide a list of the items that you want to go in your menu. So as I say, this could be a list of colors. You know, what's your favorite color? And then you put red, green, blue, whatever. That will do exactly the same thing. So that's supplied as a list. And then we call it by using the keyboard menu, passing the title, the menu list, the row, and the window width. Now the window width is kind of optional, but I've set it here as the console window width initially. So that's actually setting an 80 column width menu, which kind of looks quite neat. And as most columns are usually 80 in size, in fact, let's resize this one. Might trash it up. Let's have a look. Oop, there you go. There we go. That would fill the console quite nicely if that was 80 by 25. You can set the console size, but I haven't done that. I've just left it at its whatever it happened to have been at the time. So we've now got an 80 column wide menu bar, which has been set here using this window width, which was set to the console's window width up here. So you can of course play with that to adjust it to whatever you want. So let's see how the keyboard function works to draw a menu. So that looks a little complex. So what we'll do, I'll just put this back in. So we pass to the menu function the title, the menu list, which was our list here, the row, which would be -1 if we were in an IDE, and the window width, if not supplied, is set to 80. Then we've got to check whether the length of the title is an even number or not, because what we want to do is to make sure that this display is kind of nice and neat. If we sent a title in that was an odd number of characters, when you try to split it to work out how many gaps, spaces go here and how many go here, that might not fit in with the rest of the menu and you get like jaggy edges. So it automatically adds a single space if the total length of your title is an odd number. So that's what's dealt with here. So it just finds out whether I can't remember the name of this operand, but it gives you the remainder of dividing by 2, and if it's 1, that means you had an odd number. So you would add a space to that. Rows are set to -1 or automatically, and then depending rows you'll note with an S. This is a new variable, not row, which we've got up here. Then we're checking to change the value of rows depending on whether or not we're inside a console. And then we're adding the length of the menu list. So we've got 4 items in our list, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're adding 4 to that, and that gives the number of rows that we're going to pass in to the get integer call down here. The max length is the maximum length of the whole setup here. So if I move that out, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just answer this and then we'll run it again, but I'll choose the I'll put a stop sign in so we can go through the way this is done. So if I just put, obviously this is brilliant, so we're going to hit 1 and then we'll run that through, and then of course the console will say user thinks this utility is brilliant, press enter to quit, which I'll do, and that again is going through. Let's just, okay, so it's all stopped. So what I'm going to do now, I'll just pause for a second and I'll get back to the point where we're going to enter we're going to call the menu thing. So let's get that set up. So we're going to clear the console, title, menu list, user choice. So that's where we're going to stop. So let me pause. I'll be back in a second. Okay, so I've got my console ready now to call our getting the menu. So my title is what do you think of this utility? The menu list is a list, brilliant, not bad, could do better, and rubbish. We're on row 0. And the window width is 111. So let's pass that through. We'll press F7. Helps if I'm on the right. So we're now calling the menu function here. So title, what do you think of this utility? There we've got our list. Row is 0. Window width is 111. What this is doing here is it's checking the length of the title. So if it's an odd number, it will add a space. So I'm not going to bother to count it. Let me just press F7. It was obviously an even number, so we don't need to worry about that. Then row is currently 0, of course. So we're going to add some rows to it. So row is now still 0, but the rows are 8. So we've got 8 rows that we're taking account of. Now this maximum length is to check what the maximum length of each of the strings that we've supplied it. So we've supplied it with the title, so that'll be of a certain length, and we've supplied it with a list of menu items. Now these are all quite short, but you could send some much longer menu choices in. So the idea of this function is to get the maximum length of those. So if I press F7, it's using this get max length thing. So I've passed in the title, I've passed in the menu list, and I've passed in the window width. That's the point. I didn't actually pass it in, did I? No, I didn't. I forgot. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We can add that in a moment. So we'll just go through how it works. So we've got, if I press F7, the maximum length is currently set at the length of the title, which is what do you think of this utility? And that is 30 characters. If the menu list is not none, which it isn't because it's a list of menu items, then it's going to go through each of the items in there and check whether the length of that menu item with 9 added onto it is greater than the maximum length. The reason for adding 9 in is I want to have our menu set in by 4 or 5 spaces, plus the number and this kind of bracket and another space. So it's going to check that. So if we go through there, it appears none of them is longer. Then we're going to add an additional 28 characters to our maximum length, which is currently 30. This is to give some padding either side of the longest string that we're about to use, which is, so we're now currently on 58. It's then going to check whether it's greater than the window width -2, which it isn't, so we can stick with that. We're then again going to check whether the max length is an even or an odd number, same as we did earlier, which it isn't, and we're going to return the maximum length. So we've now got a maximum length of 58 characters. If I'd remembered to put this window width in here, which I will do a little later, then it would have returned probably the window width, but anyway, it doesn't matter. So we're now going to create a filler, which is the number of spaces after you take account of the length of the maximum length which we've set up here, which is 58 if I remember, 58, yes, and the length of the title, so that we can work out how many spaces need to go to pack the title. You'll see what I mean once I run it. So if I press F7, the filler is going to be a number of spaces. You can't count them on this tooltip, but it'll be enough to fill the spacing in the menu halfway across, taking account of the length of the title. Now the next thing is using these UTF-8 characters, which is the kind of corner brace of a box, the middle bits of the box, and then the other corner brace to make the top bar of our window. So this actually says print them out, so it's going straight into print. Let's press F7, and if I bring the console back in, you'll see we've now got this bar running across here with the corner braces in it. Next one is to put a sidebar, then the filler, which is our spaces, then the title, and then our spaces again, followed by a sidebar, so we can draw the title. So let's press F7. Let's bring that back in. There we are, in the center. What do you think of this utility? Finally, we're going to do a bar with this kind of like a halfway house bracket here. So it's vertically down with a bit that sticks out, and it's opposite number here. Again, UTF-8 characters, and we're filling it with the same characters there. So let's press F7 on that one. And we've now got, what do you think of this utility with this kind of half-drawn end bar thing here? So now we're ready to start filling in all the stuff from our menu. So let's go down. Now the reason I've got this in a for loop with using an index is that I want to insert that index to make a number. So we're doing it for the range of the length of the menu list. So our menu list is four different things: brilliant, not bad, could do better, and rubbish. So we've got 4 of them. So Python's range function starts at 0 unless you tell it otherwise. So it's going to go from 0 to the length of the menu list, which is 4. But the way the range thing works is it won't do number 4. So it'll do 0, 1, 2, 3, but it won't do 4. So I will go 1, 0, 1, 2, or 3, but it will not reach 4, even though the length of the menu list is 4. Just the way Python's range function works. If I is less than 10, in other words, we're doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, then we want to put 5 characters here between the number of our index plus 1, because I want this numbered from 1 to 4, not from 0 to 3. So this adds an extra number to make our numbering. Then we put in the menu list, which is justified to the maximum length of 58 minus 8 to compensate for these extra characters that we're putting in here, and then a sidebar. So let's do the first one of those in the for loop. So I is less than 10. So we're now going to put 1 bracket. Let's put it on there and you can see what it's coming up with. There we go. Spaces, 1 bracket, space, brilliant, which is the first of our menu items, packed with spaces, and then the end character here. So it's going to go through the list and do the same each time. So I'll put that back over here. Now, if we had a very long list and the characters were, we had more than, we had 10 or more, it would compensate for that by putting in 1 less space here. So we're now going to go through, I've just done the second one, let me just show you that. And then we'll do the third one. Well, in fact, let's do the third and the fourth. Right, so we've now done all of our ones here, and finally we're going to put in the bottom bar, which, if I bring that back across, has done our entire menu. So we're now back down to this built-in get integer, which adds the request to type the number of your choice below, which works as we've already been through. So let me just run this to completion. So let's bring that back in and we'll put in, as we did before, 1. And that finishes it all off. So the menu is drawn, the answer is below, and of course that's the end of the demonstration there. So I hope you found that useful. There are, of course, things that you can do.